Okay, there we go. We are now recording, so the meeting is beginning at 5:20 p.m. Bruce, if you want to handle that part of it, I can just open the meeting and I can do the rest of it. Actually, what I should probably do first is just give an opening statement which says, pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Freetown Cable Advisory Committee will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information in the guidelines, general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public can be found on the Town of Freetown's website, freetownma.gov. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to view this meeting will be able to view the meeting via live stream, which we can't do that because I don't have an access to it, or on freetownma.gov. However, we will be recording it and putting it up on our website. No person in attendance or members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings. An audio or video recording of the open session portion of this meeting will be posted on the town's YouTube website channel as soon as possible after the meeting. And then I guess given that we are going to be talking about contract negotiations, I'm going to ask the chair to convene an executive session pursuant to MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21, subsection A, subsection C, to discuss strategy with respect contract negotiations.
David?
Meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body and the chair so declares.
David?
Yep.
David, that doesn't apply to cable negotiations.
Okay, well, that's
we have
a problem.
We have to conduct our meeting in open session.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Contract negotiations is generally for things such as
Labor.
collective bargaining and that sort of thing. It's limited to certain types of contracts, and cable negotiations, unfortunately, aren't one of them.
So they can view everything we discuss relative
Yes.
to our negotiation. Oh, that's awesome.
Chairman?
It is odd, and we've tried to change that, but the legislature wasn't interested.
Mr. Chairman, may I suggest in Lakeville, we came up against the same issue recently. And what we did is the Cable Advisory Committee formed a negotiating team of 2 to negotiate the contract in executive session. Basically not having a quorum of members, and in doing so, being able to go into not even having it as an open meeting law meeting, and just discussing any strategy issues in that forum as opposed to an open meeting.
Jose, can I ask you, did you get an opinion from your town council when you did that?
Yes, they did. Yes, they did.
I
Your
believe
town
that
council said you
KP
could-
is your counsel, right?
Yes, they are.
Who is?
KP.
CP law. I'm not on the Cable Advisory Committee, but they did invite me as a third person in as a consultant, with only 2 members of the committee, of the Cable Advisory Committee, myself and Mike Galla. And we're scheduled to meet again next Wednesday in the same format, not open meeting and not even executive session, just a negotiating session.
Do you know what lawyer told you that?
I do know. Bob Marshall is the chairman of the Cable Advisory Committee. He can answer that question for you.
Well, all right.
Town administrator can also answer that question for you.
Well, you're recording this, right, David?
I am.
It's not live, correct?
It is not.
So it could be posted or it could not be posted, correct?
I think you have an obligation to post it as part of that mass.
Well, if Jose is talking about it could possibly go in executive session, I guess, or however you want to.
Well, what we'd have to do is, before you had gotten here, we didn't have a meeting going. So we were just like basically discussing in general, some of the things that, other communities have looked at
Right.
And if we do it in a general sense and not, one of the reasons I asked Jose to be part of the discussion tonight was so that we could get a sense from him, because he had offered, number one, to help us in terms of just giving us some advice in terms of what we should be looking for, as well as, I wasn't aware that he was on the committee or advising the committee in Lakeville. So I've talked to Karen Foy in Middleborough. I've got a sense from her specifically in terms of what is happening there now. From Jose, we've heard some of the things that, and you might want to just, if you want to just reiterate those, Jose, so that Bruce can catch up on it. We're not going to discuss it in terms of how we're going to do it, but just to give a sense on what's happening in Lakeville.
I am not sure I can discuss that in open.
Oh, all right, which is a good point. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, because that is all, yeah.
Those are all negotiating meetings that
Yeah.
are not public. So I think Comcast and Mike Gallo would have a problem with me sharing that information. Bob Marshall would too.
Well, the thing is if it's not a committee, I'm not going to make the argument either way. If it's not a formal committee, then I don't think you have to be concerned about that. But this is open session. Anything you do say will be in violation of the intent of your negotiations, and I wouldn't advise you to do that. I guess that we're just trying to get a sense specifically on. It looks like we really have our hands tied here. Other than if I just work with the chair and I don't know how does this work, Bill? I guess given that.
Well, usually when it's a group meeting, we're all together and it's not being live cable cast. Quite frankly, what we do in these meetings is the same thing we're going to do when we meet Comcast. In other words, we're saying to ourselves, all right, how much do we need? We need X amount of dollars for this project, and we need X amount of dollars for that project. We need $40,000 here. We need $30,000 there. We need another $60,000 here. There's a total of 100 or whatever that adds up to. That's what we need, as we deliberate among and between ourselves to try and figure out what our needs are. In a sense, we're not doing anything different than when we're going to sit down with Comcast and say, here's what we need and here's why. There may be some adjustments in the amount of money we're looking for. But when it comes time for us to sit down with Comcast and negotiate, there are times when we do want to be able to confer without Comcast present. For example, Comcast may say, I'll give you 80,000, and we say, all right, we want 100. The question is, will we compromise at 90? We can ask Comcast to leave the room and go down the street and get a cup of coffee at Dunkin' Donuts while we deliberate for 10 minutes. I've been doing that for 30 years, and they've always done it. They understand that we do need some time in private in the middle of our negotiations. But with respect to our ascertainment and trying to determine what exactly we're going to ask for, I frankly have not had a problem with doing it in open session. Most of the time, in theory, Comcast could come and look and pry in and see what we're doing. I don't think they do.
Because they do have access to all of the video because they're broadcasting it over their network,
That's
so
right. They do.
It's really kind of an unfair and competitive advantage on their part to know your bargaining position before you even sat down at the table. So I guess that's a bigger issue than we're ready to deal with here.
Yeah,
so.
I agree. There are times when it is unfair and it's competitively unfair to us. But to tell you the truth, most of the time it's really not a problem.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, we have the capability to ask them to leave the room here. I could say to Jose, I could put him. There's a function in Zoom to put them in a waiting room.
Yeah.
Which basically disables them from hearing the conversation of the rest of the group.
Yeah. But what is it that we're going to say that we are not going to end up telling Comcast anyway? I mean, what we need to do is figure out how much we need for annual payments and how much we need for capital and how many channels we want and other things. So we can have a discussion about those things and come to some conclusions. And I assume at some point we're going to say, all right, we need X amount of capital and we want, 3 channels. Maybe we want an HD channel. We want, senior citizen discount. I've
We
seen
want
that.
both of those, yeah.
These are public documents anyway, the things that you sent me. So it's not as though there's anything here that's really going to be prejudicial to our bargaining position that we're going to discuss. At least that's how I see it. Because most of what we say, we're going to end up telling them.
Yeah, okay. The question I would have is regarding our need, given that we have money already set aside that we haven't spent over the years for payments that we've received from Comcast. Does that hurt our bargaining position, I guess? Is that a fair question, or?
Yeah, that's a fair question. And the answer to that is, let me see here, that number is on these papers, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm not going to say it, but I see the amount. All right, so here's what Comcast would say. Is that a reserve fund for a rainy day? And if so, that's not unreasonable. Is it being saved for a large capital project such as the construction or the movement of a studio? If so, that's legit.
Okay.
If you don't really have a plan for that money, then Comcast is going to say, well, you're asking for X amount. You've already got Y amount in the bank. Why do you need it?
Okay.
So what we need to be able to do is to explain why that money is sitting there. And I always say it's perfectly legitimate to have about a 1-year reserve for PEG access expenses, just in case, the cable company goes out of business and we're left holding the bag and we want access to continue. So a 1-year reserve, however much that's going to be, what our budget would be and capital would be, a 1-year reserve is reasonable. And then there may be other capital projects we have in mind, such as studio expansion or new equipment for the school, for example, or constructing a new video return line from a new public building or town hall or something like that. Those are the sorts of things that Comcast understands. I mean, that's the nature of the business. And if, in fact, we are saving money for those potential projects in the future, it's legit, won't hurt us.
Okay. Well, one of the things is we do have, we are constructing a new police station building. And as a group, we did discuss at the last meeting using money to equip that room with, a full media, multimedia kind of system that would allow us to, hold all kinds of meetings there, I guess, not only selectmen's meetings. The question then is whether we would be taking that out of existing funds or whether we'd be asking them, hey, do you want to, would you give us money to do that, I guess?
Where do we stand as far as drops to every every government building? Do we have access to the town hall? Do we have that? Do we pay for that?
I know that there's a drop in my office. I don't know.
I've been going over the, Josh sent out a link to the contracts for Massachusetts, and I've been going over the ones that were renewed in 2020.
All right.
And I'm looking at some of the issues that were, I guess, were negotiable that you had told us, Dave. And to take them one at a time, one of them would be to have a drop at every public building. Is that?
That was on the list.
That seems to be consistent with what I've been seeing with all these cities and towns that have been negotiated in 2020.
All right, let me.
I don't think we have that.
So are you talking about a return line with a local origination capability like you have at the school? Or are you talking about a free drop with free subscriber service?
A free drop with a free subscriber service.
Yeah, we're not looking at a closed loop. I know that.
No. Comcast, the FCC ruling from last September says Comcast and cable companies are not supposed to give free drops anymore. So if you're seeing that referred to in a license, Bruce, it's Comcast is going to build a town for the basic cable service that's provided at that drop. The old rule was you used to get a free drop at every public building and free basic service. That's out the window. The FCC said you can't do that anymore. Comcast isn't doing that. So
Yeah.
whatever drops, and I notice we've got a list in our current license, an exhibit of about 20 different locations that are public buildings. We'll have to decide, do we want to continue to get cable service at those buildings? And if so, we'll be billed, but we won't get them for free anymore. And if we don't want them there, we'll tell Comcast and they won't bill us.
All right, let me, this is, I'm going to put up, this is what we were looking at at our last meeting. Can everybody see the screen and all of that? The bargaining points?
Yeah. Well, you're getting pretty good at this, Dave.
Yeah, that's the first time I've ever done that, so I'm kind of proud of myself for doing that. Basically, we just want to go through them. We had talked about the franchise fees, the net. We were concerned about the net increase on the actual subscribers themselves. You know, and the thought there was that we'd use those monies to pay for the videographer and for the services that we basically through Lake Cam and through Middle Cam provide. We also talked about 3 standard def and at least 1 high def channel, at least 1 additional public access channel, which was not government or educational. And I'm not sure how that, Jose, how that affects you. We looked at a senior discount. We were told that the Comcast does allow that, but it's generally not part of the contract. That's usually a side agreement or a side letter. We're looking at capital funding for a studio that could either be at the Freetown Elementary or at the high school. We control the Freetown Elementary, and there is a small studio over there already on the stage. The idea there was that we could, you know, reactivate that and potentially use that to do like some, you know, programming on our end. Or once again, if Jose, if that, I don't know how, you know, we could tie back to you in terms of the studio you guys have. That's another potential perspective. The other thing we talked about was looking at it as a regional school project, talking to the superintendent, reinstituting the studio that was over there at one point, probably 10 or 15 years ago, and having the kids actually produce their own programs, as well as having that studio available to community groups. And once again, my intent is not to compete with Lake Cam, but just to have a studio for the kids and to hire somebody with those funds to teach the kids how to do their own programming and video recording. We looked at the local government in terms of the new police station and the equipment we could get over there for that. We talked about an electronic program guide, which is scrolling information, which lets the subscribers know what's on all of the PEG channels. And this is the part that Bruce had just brought up about free cable drops, monthly basic cable TV service to municipal buildings. So that's what we're looking at.
Comment on a couple of those. Let's start at the bottom, number 7. We have that in our contract, drops at municipal buildings. It's in our current contract. Comcast has not asked for us to pay for them. So we're getting a little bit of mixed messages here as to the free drops.
Do you want to be saying this because it is open session, and I don't know if you want to. What you guys are
controversial.
All right, I don't want you violating the sanctity of your meeting either.
I'm just commenting on yours. And
all right, okay.
Been discussed prior, and in terms of the education channel related stuff, I can't really speak to that because it's really an issue with the towns and whether or not they whether Freetown wants to continue a relationship with Lake Cam, and that's negotiable too. And these other things really don't come into effect unless and if Comcast provides you with some more money, it looks like.
Yeah, the thing there is not, the intent was not to replace LetCam. The intent was, specifically in the reference that we talked about it, was to give the kids an educational opportunity to do their own programming at the high school, and to have, to use some of those funds that we take in to hire a halftime teacher to actually serve as an instructor and help the kids do the stuff that they want to do. We have not talked to the school about it at this point. These are all ideas we are bouncing around. The local government request for the police station, that is something we definitely want to do. We've talked about that, and I think everybody in the group or the committee thinks that's a good idea, because that is going to be where we're going to be broadcasting all the selectmen's meetings, large planning board meetings, ZBA meetings. I don't think so much community functions, but major board meetings are going to be held there. So we want to make sure that we have sort of a state of the art setup to allow us to be able to broadcast at the police station.
We've done that in Lakeville at our new police station.
All right. Do you know how much they got for that, just out of curiosity? Or how much they paid for it?
We paid approximately $25,000 to set that up, but we already had some equipment set up in our head end, our sub head end. So it may cost more to get the signal back to Middleborough and getting it connected. That's the other issue.
David, do you have any numbers on Freetown's plan to set up the studio at the police station?
That's why I was asking Jose. I don't.
Yeah.
That's, if it's 25, then I would say we're probably doing 25, 35, maybe add 10,000 on top of that too.
Well, David, has there been any talk with the police subcommittee about,
I could bring that, what I can do is I can bring that up on, we have a team meeting on Thursday. And I can bring that up as a discussion point.
and I guess the question is, I'm probably getting away from this a little bit, but maybe not, because what dictates who's going to use that community room? Is there going to be, I know it's going to be governmental parties, but is everybody going to have access, such as the planning board, board of appeals?
That's the intent, yeah.
So that,
We're not going to allow, from my understanding, it's not going to be, let's have the Boy Scouts come in and use it for a dinner kind of thing.
Right.
We're not going to allow food in the room. We're not going to, it's going to be basically, it's going to be governmental.
Okay.
Per se. And the key part of the room is not really to serve as a meeting room, but it's also our command center for emergency situations, where if we have a hurricane or a tornado or some kind of a crisis, that will be command central. That's the real intent of the room. And having the ability to broadcast, or at least, to communicate as a command center. That would probably make a better argument, actually.
well, it's probably got to be, I don't know if we missed a window of opportunity there, because if I understand, the room is going to be buttoned up, I guess. The whole building is going to be buttoned up shortly with
Yeah,
sheet.
by the end of July. The thing is that we do, I guess the question would be, and we're probably late in the process here, but can things be done after the fact? Is it, like,
You can't run cable through the sheetrock, that's for sure. If that's
Yeah.
what's going to be done. So, I mean, that was kind of poor planning on their part if they didn't at least bring that up to discuss it,
yeah, I never even thought of it, honestly. I hate to say that, but it was never really.
David, in Lakeville, I was involved in the actual design of that room. So they brought me in really early But I will say that the install was way after they finished. And the only thing they really provided for was power connectors near where the cameras were. We still had to run cable through the ceiling in order to get it to the cameras. So it wasn't that much of an advantage.
So we can do it after the fact if we wanted to.
The only thing I would recommend is if there is the possibility of running a metal conduit from the server room to where you're going to put the switching equipment. We had that run into the closet that we had our equipment in, and that helped us get the Ethernet cable back to the server room and have the fiber run to the server room.
Okay.
So that was helpful, very helpful.
Okay.
You may wind up, depending on how long the run has to be, back to the elementary school. It is really close by, I think, correct?
It is. It's relatively close. Yeah.
If the elementary school is still connected back to the Middleborough head end?
That I don't know. Like I said, the technical parts of this, I'll be upfront and honest with you. I honestly don't have the answers.
That could
You
be,
know how the whole thing fits together. I'm not that's not my wheelhouse.
that could
You said there's a meeting Thursday night, David?
Thursday morning, police team. It's generally the contractor, the engineer, the architect, the OPM, our project manager, and a couple committee members.
Well, it should be brought up at that meeting, I would think, at this point, while
I
we're
can do
negotiating, to find out what exactly they want to do, because I think it's imperative that we do something.
All right, and we do it in our own defense. We do have money set. We do have some money set aside that we could use now. We wouldn't have to wait for the negotiations per se.
Right.
Use those monies and say, hey, let's get this done while we're still in the place where we are.
So I guess let's get back to the paper, the list that you have here up here, and try to go at them one at a time or something, and maybe not do them all now because time's limited, but I think we need to discuss all those. The senior discount, additional public access channel, that looks like it. I looked in some of the other contracts and that seems to be initiated in some of those. So,
Well, if you want to talk about the additional channel, one of the things you'll probably be asked to demonstrate is that you're going to have programming to put on that additional channel. That is, you've got your two current channels are filled and you've got additional programming being proposed. So you need that extra bandwidth. So you might want to keep that in mind and start to think in terms of how you're going to justify asking for an additional channel. They'll give it to us. They frequently do, often do, and but they may ask us, well, are both your channels currently filled up? Are both your channels, fully utilized? Do you have dead air time? Do you have a lot of programming that you're repeating over and over again, where you could fit in new programming, that sort of thing? So think in those terms before we sit down with Mike Galla, and let's be prepared to show them that we need a third channel because we're filled up on the other two. Senior discount, not a problem. That's a side letter. We should get that.
On the outside programming, in terms of Lake Cam, where you already have the studio, would there be a natural fit there to use have certain rentals that we, rather than build a studio, using the Lake Cam studio for programming?
Just like we're doing with the education channel, we could do that with both if you wanted to share our government channel and share our public channel also. We do fill all of them up. And we did buy extra capacity when we bought our cable caster. We have a Teleview B1000, exactly with that in mind. So we could definitely cooperate like we have with the education channel. It's all negotiable as to how much it would cost. It sounds like you're going to have a lot more government channel programming available. We have been doing some public channel programming for Freetown and putting it on the education channel, which we share. Not a lot, but just some. I think it would be beneficial to both towns to have a combined public channel, because we have a limited amount of local programming for that public channel. Having additional from Freetown would fill that up even more with local programming.
Jose, what channel is that?
You don't see it in Freetown.
All right, so how do we do that, I guess?
You have Verizon.
Yeah, but Verizon is such a tiny population in Freetown.
Right.
It's only on a couple streets, basically.
Yeah, near New Bedford, right?
Yeah.
So our channels on Comcast are channel 9, channel 9 is government, channel 20 is education, and channel 95 is public channel. I don't know if those match up with Freetown, do they?
Yeah, 9 does and 95, but I haven't checked 20.
So 9 is the government, 20 is the educational, and 95 is the public.
Yeah, so they don't line up perfectly, but that's something at the head end in Middleborough. Because we're connected to the head end in Middleborough, then the signal can come from us like it does on our education channel and go to Freetown.
So this is a dumb question. How do the Freetown people get all the regional, like, sports and all of that? That comes over to channel 20?
You mean it comes over the education channel, which we send to Comcast in Middleborough.
Oh, all right. Okay. So Lake Cam send it. All right.
And Comcast in Middleborough sends it back to Lakeville and Freetown.
All right. So sends it to Middleborough.
No, I don't think it sends it to Middleborough.
All right. So how does that work? You just said Lake Cam sends it to Middleborough, and then they send it back to Lakeville and to Freetown.
Sends it to Comcast in Middleborough.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. All right.
Their head end, and that head end sends the signal back to Lakeville and Freetown.
Sends it to Comcast.
So you're saying that there's a possibility. I mean, we can get another channel. We just need to justify the means, correct?
Well, what Bill is saying is you need to justify that you need an extra channel for more programming, and that you will fill that channel programming. Well, we're already doing that on our public channel.
Right.
We're filling programming. So as a combined two-town service, we would have more programming from both the towns than we currently do with just one. For instance, you would have, if it was a normal year, you'd have the Memorial Day service from Freetown on, and Lakeville would too.
Yeah.
For instance, Freetown, it sounds like Freetown wants to continue creating their own programming. That's fine. And currently, I'm not sure how I know how, that's right. The government channel programming is getting to Middleborough's McCann service, and then McCann is sending it to the Comcast head end. That goes to you on your government channel.
All right. So what channels do we have? I don't live in town. So what channels do we currently have?
9.
We have 9 and 95.
95.
And 95. I don't think you have 20. I don't think you have. I think you have your education channel on channel 9. No. Middleborough shares the government channel with you on channel 9, I believe. And I don't think you have a channel 95.
Yeah, we do.
And is that the high school sports?
Yeah, I believe it is. Yep.
They just swapped it for some reason at the head end.
Yeah, because I just looked at it the other day and we got 9 and 95. I don't believe I have tried 20, but maybe not.
20,
So
yeah,
nine is the governmental channel.
correct. That's pretty standard
All right.
for Comcast.
In 95, in our instance, is the educational.
And it really should be on 20. And it would probably switch to 20 if you were at a public channel on channel 95.
All right.
Well, in that regard, and talking about the channel, I mean, I just got on this committee about a year ago, but I can recall 20 years ago, we had a very active cable committee where individuals were doing a lot of work. We had our own studio in Berkeley. That's something that, in my thoughts, to bring back. I mean, I know we're sitting here trying to negotiate with Comcast on what we want, but I don't look at it as ending here, because for the last 20 years, probably 15 of those years, we've never had an active cable committee that was actually doing what they should probably do.
Well, the thing here is that where Lakeville and Lake Cam, they could serve that same role that Berkeley once did in
Right.
terms of, providing us a means. They have a studio. You guys have built out a studio, correct?
We have a sub head end in our library, and that's where we send our signal to Comcast in Middleborough.
So where do you do live programming, I guess, or programming? You don't make any local programming?
We do make some, but most of it is portable equipment going to the event.
All right, okay. So if we built a studio, we could then, because I was under the impression you guys were that, maybe I was thinking Middleborough. They just built a studio, is that correct? Yeah.
Just finished building a studio downtown Middleborough, yes.
Is there any plans on Lakeville's end to do something like that?
2023.
All right.
I have a question real quick about the channels. Now, I don't know, I've never tried it. I know that we do our meetings, we post them on the YouTube channel and stuff like that. But are any of the programming in like a universal place on, so I could, like, if you wanted to watch it on demand, so to speak, is that available? And is that something that could be part of it if people wanted to like stream it? One of the education, like say I wanted to watch like the local high school football game, but I'm hooked up to my cable right at the point in time, or is there a way to do that on demand or something? Or you want to watch something, on your lunch break, you want to watch the town meeting or something?
Here's the question for you. As someone, just use the example of you're someone who cut the cord. You're no longer paying for this service to be made available, for the programs to be shot, for all the equipment, for the people. You're no longer contributing to the funds that make this happen. In Lakeville, we have shared our government channel programming openly on Vimeo, and through our Lake Cam website, we have an archive of all of our meetings. You click on that, it takes you to Vimeo, you can watch it. We have been a little less generous about other programming that we do. We have tried to leave as much up there as possible, but unfortunately, Vimeo costs about $900 a year in order to have 5 terabytes or 7 terabytes of space in order to share that. The question comes, who's paying for this? If everybody can watch it VOD, then nobody's paying for it, and there's no reason this will not exist once these contracts are up.
Okay, I didn't think of that, but now I feel bad about saying I was going to cut the cord. I didn't draw that conclusion, but that's all right.
We could put a paywall on that VOD to collect revenues, but we haven't done it. But that's always been a discussion among cable advisory committees, especially, and boards of directors of Lake Cam, is why would we share that work for free?
Yeah.
to people who don't pay towards creating it.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question, Josh?
Yes, yeah, I wasn't sure how it all worked and if the availability of that and you know, if say like it's on demand, like you could do it on demand if you had the cable service, like you can watch, you know, like if you can watch ESPN if you log in with your cable provider.
No, they're not providing us with that ability yet.
Yeah.
There has been talk, there have been rumors that they wanted to get into that business, and we're happy to let them do that. If we're going to get some revenue back from that, fine. But if we're not, then why would we?
Yeah.
We would be putting ourselves out of business.
Yeah. Yeah. And I honestly didn't think of that.
But we
Good
provide,
information.
because people want it and people almost demand it to be able to watch it. And we have a pretty good penetration in Lakeville. We have about 4,000 homes, and that's a pretty high number of homes in Lakeville that are still on cable. We've had very little loss. We've had some increases actually because the cable companies keep increasing their fees.
Well, that's what's driving people away. I hate to say it. The cost of programming, you know, it had gone from something that was affordable. You paid like $79. We got the internet and some basic channels and maybe HBO for 80. But now, I'm looking at it personally, $185. I don't want to spend $185 a month on, and the internet portion of it is $70. You know, there's something that used to be 15 to 20, now is 70. So that's where the pushback is coming. They're saying, well, geez, I'll pay the 70 to get the broadband and the high speed, but I'm not going to pay all that extra money for channels I don't watch anyway.
Just a warning, what's driving that price up is content creators, and they don't allow the cable companies to do a la carte of their programming.
Yeah.
So the cable aggregators are required to buy the entire network and not just buy the ones that people want, and that up the price. And we have no control over that. I don't think Comcast and Verizon do, because it's federal law.
Yeah, it's just it would be so much easier if you could just buy what you wanted. You know, there's a whole bunch of, you know, you got that, you know, Springsteen song there, the 700 channels and nothing on. You know, it's basically, you know, you flip it through the channels and you always gravitate back towards the channels that, you know, for me it's the, you know, the news channels and the history channel and science channel, and, you know, other than that I don't care about cooking. I don't care about, you know, to a certain degree sports other than the football season. You know, for me it's not I would just prefer to buy what I could buy, but that's a side discussion that we really, you know, don't need to be involved in.
Yeah.
Do we want to, in terms of the high def channel, we're guaranteed that too? I'm hearing that that's a give me at this point.
Yeah, you can get a high def channel. Comcast is doing that. So is Verizon. The conditions are typically, Comcast usually imposes conditions on it. One of them is they have tried in several places to make you pay for it, $30,000 or something like that. We've pushed back on that. The other condition you get is they don't want to do it before 36 months, which is, or 36 months with 3 years. 3 years out of a 10-year contract. In other words, they're not going to perform until 3 years, you know, a third of the contract. We're pushing back on that too. We're negotiating that, and Comcast has relented, and in some places they've given it the HD channel in as few as 13 months, but that's the soonest you can get it. But the bottom line is, yeah, it's negotiable and it's achievable, and communities are getting it.
I guess Jose, I'm sorry. What would the driver be for the HD?
If you're recording your programming in HD, like we are for most of our high school sports.
Oh, all right, okay.
Definite plus. And Verizon gave us an HD channel. They didn't take 3 years to set it up. I think it took a year and a half. But we're currently sending an HD channel. Let me say, we're sending all of our programming in HD to all of our 3 channels, but only Verizon Education channel is coming back in HD. If you're subscriber, and we're currently doing that. So I, as a Verizon subscriber, can see our high school sports and all of our education programming in HD.
All right.
I would
So
recommend,
there is an advantage to that.
yes.
All right.
So if you were to, you have to pick the channel in advance of that you want in HD. I would recommend it would be our education channel. And the reason I did that is because most of our local programming that we shoot for our education channel, no, I'm sorry, all of our programming that Lake Cam shoots for education channel is in HD. So HD customers see it in HD.
Mm.
I'm sorry. HD, not full HD, but HD. There's a difference. It's 720p.
All right. So it's not 1080p or 4K.
Well, I don't think any of the channels are fully 1080p
1080. Yep.
PI, but they're not 1080p. But Verizon put in equipment in Lake Cam's sub head end for HD to send HD signals to them on all 3 channels, and we're doing that. And then they take that and downsize it for the other 2 channels, and for the education channel for people who watch it on SD, like the people in Freetown, it downsizes it to that.
Now, did Verizon charge you for 30 grand for that, or?
They did not.
No?
That was in 2018 that negotiation ended, and you can see our contract. It's on the state's website.
Verizon doesn't charge you, and they give it to you in 18 months or sometime sooner. They're easier to negotiate with respect to HD channels than Comcast. I don't know.
What is it? Why is it cost? Does it cost them $30,000, or that's just?
Well, there is new equipment. I can't answer. That's a number I just pulled out of the air. It's my recollection, David.
Mm.
It might not be quite that much, but it was up there like between 20 and 30,000 to get this in one that they tried to impose in one town we were doing. There's new equipment, and it depends on whether there is any HD capability existing already in the town. If you've already got some of the equipment and you're just doing it locally, but it's not being rebroadcast to the subscribers, then you're ahead of the game. So you may save money there. Depends entirely on what you've got locally.
Yeah.
It's a 4th channel.
I'm sorry.
Essentially, it's a 4th channel, though.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Even though Lake Cam chose to have the education channel be sent to customers in Lakeville and Freetown in both SD and HD, essentially it's a 4th channel that they have to deal with on sending it back out to customers. Even though we only send them 1 signal, they then create 2 separate transmissions of that.
Yeah, it's 2 different streams.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Then the last thing is how much we're going to ask for the franchise fee, and that is that's a tough one, because I know that the committee members have expressed concern about passing that cost on to the individual subscribers. So I don't. Right now, we charge 1%. We have had some discussion about looking for additional, percentage or a percentage and a half. But there has been no real discussion about, number one, what that amount would be, and number 2, whether we'd be using it for, like I said earlier, for videographers, for salaries, capital equipment, and that kind of thing. So obviously, if we're going to do the HD, we're going to need equipment. So that would be one of the reasons why we'd want to do that.
How long we been where we're at? That's the question.
What do you mean?
Well, what are we right now? Right now, 1.5%?
We're 1
1%. Okay, so how long have we been 1%?
since the beginning, I guess.
Now this is a negotiable item, obviously. Not really negotiable, is it? Can it be revisited later on, Bill?
No, I don't think so.
No,
Bill can answer that.
it's negotiable. when the licenses, when you're negotiating for a new license, you can negotiate it up or down.
Right.
In the middle of the term, it's set. So if you've got a 10-year license like we have now, you won't be able to renegotiate that. Or if we enter into a 10-year license in the future up till 2030, we wouldn't be able to renegotiate that percentage of gross annual revenue. It's set. It's in the license, and the cable companies won't renegotiate because they look at this as, you know, a 10-year expense, and they want to keep their expenses foreseeable and allocable. So the answer is it's set when you negotiate it, but it's negotiable at the time you're looking at a new license.
How do they see that as an expense if they're just passing that percentage on as a percentage of the bill? How do they see that? It's not an expense to them other than putting it on the bill and collecting it and transmitting it to us.
Well, that's true, but they will tell you that there is still a cost. And the cost is that when you up the pass-through costs and raise subscribers' rates, they've got statistics that will show you for each, you know, additional 50 cents, they lose X number of subscribers, something like that. So it's a bit two-faced of them because we all know how the subscriber fees go up every January or every other January, how they just jack them up really high. So here they are complaining about going from 1 to 2.5%, but they do. And they do say there's a cost. And so it is at least a theoretical cost, if not an actual practical one.
In relation to the franchise fee and I guess the capital that we asked for is actually dispersed through the 10 years as well, added onto the cable bill, or how does that come out exactly?
Jose had said earlier that the capital costs are hidden in the bill, so to speak. That that's one of the fees that they're charging.
All right.
Yeah, you can look in your bill and you'll see two components. You'll see a franchise fee and you'll see I think it's access fee, or it might be license fee. You'll see the percentage, 1% currently, and you'll see an amount that on your current bills would represent the $65,000 and the $21,000. Is it 60, whatever it is, 76,000 total you got over 10 years. So it's $7,600 a year amortized out, and it's passed through to the subscribers. So you'll see that on your bill. It's spread out over 10 years. And if we were to ask for capital this time, they would do the same thing. They take the total over 10 years, divide it into 10, divide it by the number of subscribers, divide it by the month, and that's a pass-through cost. And it'll show up in your bill as something like 30 cents or 25 cents per month per subscriber.
Now, will that go up or down if subscribers fluctuate during that whole contract time? Like, would say all of a sudden there's 1,000 more people, does that lower the cost to you know what I'm?
That's a really good question, because I was making an assumption it's a percentage of the bill, but is it a percentage of the total revenue?
Well, you've got two types of pass-through costs. You've got the percentage of gross annual revenue, so that doesn't change. The amount that you would get per quarter will change. If subscribers go up, you'll get more. If subscribership goes down, you'll get less. But everybody just gets billed 1% right now of whatever their bill is. The capital, because it is a fixed amount of money, a fixed number, does fluctuate. If subscribers go down, the price per subscriber goes up. If subscribership goes up, the price goes down. So that fluctuates. Now, that brings up an interesting point, and that is, might it not be better to ask for capital expressed as a percentage of gross annual revenues rather than as a fixed sum? And that's something we can discuss as a strategy, but there's benefits and there's detriments to either one of those two vehicles.
Because that was my only thought on how that all went, because if cable subscribership goes down, you're going to see a huge increase on if we increase, depending how we do the capital and or the franchise fee increase. So that's where my thought was on that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Actually, that's a good point. Because if the fixed sum, if the subscribers numbers go down, then that makes the fee go up. Versus just saying it's a percentage of the gross revenues, then, you know, at least it's not subject to the kind of fluctuation the other one would be.
Yeah.
Of course, the flip side of that is if you have if capital is a percentage of gross annual revenue, you're going to get fluctuations. And if you lose subscribers over the next 10 years, as is the current trend, you're going to get less and less money every year. If it's expressed as a fixed amount, you know, $6,500 a year, then you get that every year. You continue to get the same amount
right.
each year. There's a benefit to that as well as a detriment.
All right, so I misunderstood that entirely. I thought the fixed sum would be a function of how many subscribers are part of the entire town, I guess. That they take X amount of subscribers, they take the amount for the fixed sum and they just divide it up. So if it's 3,000, I don't know even how to explain this. I think that Josh had stated it by saying that if the number of subscribers go down, based on the fixed sum, that amount would go up, that people would be paying more to meet that fixed sum amount. Does that make sense?
That's correct. So, I mean, think of it in real simple terms. If you've got 2 subscribers and you're getting a fixed sum of $1,000, each one of them pays $500. If one of those subscribers leaves, then the last one pays $1,000. That's how it works.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not so crazy about that either. All right. I guess at this point, I don't know anything else, Bruce, that you think we should be.
No, I think we should discuss maybe at another time, David. We got to what, October? Not that long, but I mean, October is when we got to
sign it. Yeah.
Sign it, right. But I think we need to discuss what we're going to be doing in the future, as well as what we're doing with this negotiation as well. You know, because we got the funds available right now to do something. The 1%.
Would there be any objection if I said to the police team that we have X amount of dollars available that we could use to do sort of? Does it have to be like camera equipment? Can it be technology based?
Well, my thoughts is I know, and it's been a while since I've been to a couple of town buildings, but I think Dartmouth has cameras installed on the walls that someone controls.
Yeah.
Now, I don't have a problem, I guess. Well, I do it in one way, another way I don't. Is that we would be able to subsidize the installation and purchase of any equipment to do the video. But other than that, no. I mean, that money is got to be used for what we feel deemed necessary for the cable committee and public access.
All right, but we would support a sound system, not a PA system kind of thing, and fixed cameras that would allow us to transmit a signal without having a videographer there to actually do it.
Because I forget, if I recall right, I think Dartmouth may have it, and if I recall, there was one guy that just pointed, the camera in certain directions with a monitor as they were speaking, something like that.
Jose, do you know how those systems operate?
Yeah, it usually requires one person there switching between cameras. We install 5 cameras in the station's meeting room. 5 cameras.
Okay.
So
is there one locally, Jose?
I'm sorry?
Is there I keep mentioning Dartmouth, but are there other towns that you familiar with that has this?
Yeah, Middleborough.
Middleborough does?
Selectman's office, a selectman's meeting room has 4 cameras and one person switching it.
Is it usually a member that's there at the meeting, or is it somebody that's outside of the meeting?
For late cam or someone who works from a cam.
Oh, all right, okay. So you still need somebody there, basically.
Yeah, I mean, you could have volunteers from the Cable Advisory Committee. It does take time to learn the technology
Yeah.
and the skills.
Well, that's our long-term, is that, I mean, Josh, I don't know what your thoughts are when you came aboard, but my thoughts when I came aboard was that to try to establish, define the cable advisory and cable committee, not just to negotiate the contract, but to also try to keep it going, maybe get more members involved, like we did 20 years ago when we had it at that point,
I would just like to see it community based. My whole thing is, I mean, I know it's evolving with kids these days. They can do stuff on their phone, but
Right.
I still think there's a value in, learning some of the production methods that go along with, the traditional methods and how they're evolving beyond, just shooting a video on your phone and, TikToking and whatever, everybody's doing these days. I was kind of getting to the point where I think we can, if we end up bringing the kids back into it, they could actually run some of these video sessions for meetings or what have you.
Make it part of the educational system.
Correct, yeah, and that way, that they'll be doing that after school as part of their stuff to look good on their college resume or just for fun or whatever they enjoy it for.
Well, maybe we ought to have another meeting and just discuss that topic to enhance what we're doing. You know what I mean?
I could actually, if we want to have a meeting and bring Rick Maderos in, I'm sure he'd be happy to talk to us about that.
Because I think it'd be nice that to gauge the interest too, more so to see if we can get the kids into it. I mean, do they really want to do it, or is there a way we can promote it that makes it more, oh, why am I going to take a class on that when I can, watch a video? And so those are things we might want to try to gauge a little more and try to drum up the interest, and maybe kind of explain to them what it is. If somebody has the experience, doing a production, maybe we can, have somebody kind of talk to the kids like that.
I can see where the kids would love that. Honestly,
Yeah.
Where if they had their own, sort of they have their own news in the morning or at night, or have when there's a play. Well, I don't know if you guys do that now, Lake Cam. Do you do plays and things like that, or?
We cover as much as we can at the school. Unfortunately, plays are copywritten, and
Oh yeah, I know that. Okay, yeah, like Disney and all of that. Yeah.
I'd love to talk to each and every one of you about my experience with the education system over the past 6 years, but I'd like to do that offline individually.
All right. Okay. I'd be happy to. Would you think at this point it's worth having the superintendent on just to talk about that, or do you want to?
You may want to talk to him.
We should talk to Jose about before we do that.
Yes.
Okay.
Or just 2 members, so it's not a quorum.
Well, it could be myself and Bruce, or
we can talk.
and then myself and Josh, and Bob. I don't know what happened to Bob, but
He dropped off.
Did we lose Bruce?
uh,
I don't see the video of Bruce anymore.
oh, okay.
He dropped off.
Okay, we don't have a quorum now. All right.